have a tenant, right? Had nowhere to go, nowhere to live. He was basically homeless, didn't have a deposit, didn't have his first month's rent. Normally happens is we apply to Universal Credit will backdate his payment. So he's been there probably just over a month and obviously not paid anything. So his Universal Credit dropped yesterday, which was his first month's rent. Yesterday, since trying to get hold of him for most of the day, didn't respond, didn't call me back, finally answered and told me he didn't have the money because he'd spent it. Now this is between literally yesterday and today. His response was, I had stuff that I needed to pay for, I had debts I needed to pay, it was my son's birthday, so I couldn't care less. That money that you receive is for your rent. Your response was, oh, so I'm not allowed to have fun with my kids. Your priority should be the roof that is over your head. It's annoying for me because I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. He's then taken advantage of that. Obviously, he's spent this money, so there's not a lot I can do. You can't really get blood out of a stone. Generally speaking, I just feel like God is really trying to test my patience this month. It's working.
Yo, champ, I don't even know what to say. Maybe it is God testing patience right there. But shout out to the young champion for even being bold enough to share this experience, this story that he's going through. I guess for the tenant, I guess the question I have is, what do you guys think? Do you actually think it's kids versus keys? Who comes up tops? Are kids more important than your keys? Is it about the children or the crib? Someone let me know in the comments below, because as I was watching this, I'm thinking to myself, how come so many of us are not educated on how things are supposed to work? And when I say that, you know, this is no shade to the gentleman sharing his story. Shout out to him being young, having a property, having tenants, generating revenue, regardless of how much revenue that is, or attempting to generate revenue. But more so, my thought process in this is, why is there no education around this so that we don't end up in these situations, in these scenarios, in these settings where we are losing based on lacking information that we could be getting, and thus not having to be choosing to literally lose? What needs to happen in this kind of situation, especially if you're dealing with a universal credit style tenant, is you need to have an alternative payment arrangement. This is something you can apply for as a landlord. And as long as you put the right things in your application, and as long as obviously the tenant is in agreement, you'll be getting those payments directly to you. So the question that comes to my mind is, why did this young man not know that? Why did this young man not follow that protocol or that process? Now, it might be the case that he followed the protocol and process, but it's just not being shared in the video. But inside of this video, it sounds like he went out as the quote unquote good Samaritan, attempted to bless this individual by giving him a property to stay in, and very quickly found out that that's not how you get it done in a clean-cut fashion. Now, there's a few things I'll share on this which I think are super interesting and I think will be super helpful for all of us. The first is the different kind of tenant types. Now, you can see the tenant types that this individual has ultimately decided to work with. And these are not the tenant types that most people work with, but there are multiple different tenant types. One of those is LHA tenants, okay? So that's local housing authority tenants, which is the kind of tenant that he's described that he had inside of his property. This is someone who's tapping into housing allowance in order to allow the authority to pay for their property. The second type of tenant you have is working professional, okay? Now, these can be different kinds of levels of profession, but typically you're dealing with a working professional. By working professional, we're talking about someone who goes out there, makes their bread, comes back and pays for the place where they lay their head, right? This is someone who's paying the rent themselves. That's a working professional. That might be self-employed. They might have their own business. That might be someone who's actually working as a high-level professional. So, you know, the kind of professional who's graduate level salary, those kind of things, all right? Then the next thing you have is one that most people are very common with, and most people think everybody rents to. You then have students, okay? You have students, okay? And students typically are a very big market in the property sector, but by no means are they the biggest market. A lot of people think that students are the only way you can rent. Students are who everybody rents to, etc., etc. Then you have, after that, you have basically what I'm going to call trades people, okay? Trades people. Now, these are people who don't necessarily have a degree or graduate certificates in any way, shape, or form, but they are generating income. They're generating their own income. They've got working lives, and as a result, they can pay their rent. Now, when you think about these 4 different types of tenant types, you have to ask yourself, which one do you want to rent to? Now, different people do different things, and different people can do whatever they desire to do, but I'd always encourage people to choose a tenant type that fits your way of wanting to run your business. If it's a property business, then you have to think, okay, what kind of tenants do I think I'm going to be able to engage with and connect with and build rapport with in order to make sure that things like this don't happen to me and I don't end up someone who wants to get paid rent, but for some reason I'm not being paid rent. Now, it's obvious, hopefully for all of us to understand that LHA tenants, local housing authority tenants, typically, if you don't come from that kind of a background, or if you don't have any kind of training or wherewithal in that kind of a background, can be, for some people, some of the most difficult tenants for you to navigate with because of the fact that they might not think the way you think, okay? So you have to think about that with whichever group you're working with, not just the LHA tenants, but any group you work with. You have to think to yourself, well, hold on a minute, are they going to be thinking the way I'm thinking? Are they going to do things the way I do things, so that you know you're working with the right people? So this is how this works specifically. So you have to choose the tenant type that works for you. Don't be someone who just jumps in and thinks, okay, any tenant type is going to work for me. If it's going to be, it's up to me, and I'm doing property, right? It doesn't just work like that. It works from a perspective where you get the education, and the moment you have the education, the disorder doesn't have to disorientate your destiny, and instead you can literally understand how to do things the best way. Now, guys, there's different ways to learn. One of the ways to learn is through going through failure, is through going through loss, so you can take the leverage of the learning from that. That's okay. That's a way to learn. But the beautiful thing we have to understand is this is not 400, 500 years ago, where the only people doing real estate or property are the people doing real estate or property, and we can only become what our mum and dad is going to cause us to be, right? This isn't that time anymore. We are in the modern era where whatever you desire to do, someone else is out there already doing it. So what that means is, if you desire to invest in yourself, you can learn the processes, the principles, the practices, and the literal pathways in order for you to circumvent all the other people out there attempting to do the same thing. One of the things I was thinking of early hours of this morning is very simply the fact that you are one lesson away from speeding past all of the people you consider as your competition, because a principle provides leverage. So getting out there, getting the education, getting an understanding, getting the deep, detailed knowledge of what you're doing before you start doing it is the simplest way for you to participate in any game, any wealth creation, any lane that you desire to get into. So I'd love to know from you, comments down below. Has something like this ever happened to you? Have you struggled in your property business because of the type of tenant that you attempted to get into your property? And last but not least, also let me know, what tenant type do you think is the best suited tenant type for you and your lifestyle if you are in property, or if you're thinking of getting into property? And again, shout out to the young king, shout out to the champion for actually taking the opportunity, getting the house, renting out the house, and even having the drama he's having, sharing the journey, because this is going to allow other people, both young and old, to be able to learn from the story that's been told. With that being said, Sammy ICanWin signing out. Good day, God bless, and as I usually say, small keys open big doors. I'll see you on the next one. Let's go.
Small keys open big doors.